Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. There was once a very rich merchant. He had so much money that he could have covered the entire street, and maybe even a small side street, with silver. But he didn't do that because he knew better ways to use his money. Whenever he spent a shilling, he earned a pound in return. He was a brilliant businessman, but one day, he passed away, and all his wealth was inherited by his son. The son lived a life of fun and luxury. Every night, he went to the theater. He made paper kites out of 5-pound notes and skipped stones using gold coins instead of pebbles. He wasted money without a care, and soon, as expected, it all disappeared, at last. He had only 4 shillings left. His fine clothes were gone, and all he had was an old dressing gown and a pair of worn-out slippers. His so-called friends abandoned him. They didn't even want to be seen walking with him on the street. Only one friend, who was a little kind, sent him an old trunk with a short note, "Pack up," but what was there to pack? He had nothing left. So, instead, he climbed into the trunk himself. To his surprise, the trunk was magical. As soon as he pressed the lock, it lifted off the ground and flew. Up it soared, through the chimney, high into the sky, and far, far away. As he traveled, the trunk creaked from time to time. Each time, his heart pounded with fear, worrying that it might break apart. If it did, he would fall from the sky. What a terrible fate that would be. After flying for a long time, the trunk finally reached the land of the Turks. He hid it in a forest, covering it with dry leaves. Then, he set off to explore the town, wondering what new adventures awaited him. Luckily, he didn't look out of place because all the Turks dressed just like him, in dressing gowns and slippers. As he walked through the town, he met a nurse holding a little child. "Hello, Turkish nurse," he said. "What is that grand castle over there? The one with the tall windows?" "That's where the Shah's daughter lives," the nurse replied. "It has been foretold that she will have bad luck in her marriage, so no one is allowed to see her. Only the Shah and the Banu can visit her." "Thank you," said the merchant's son. Curious, he hurried back to the woods, climbed into his enchanted trunk, and flew up to the castle roof. He crept through the window into the princess's room. She was lying on a sofa, fast asleep. She looked so beautiful that the young man couldn't resist giving her a gentle kiss. The princess woke up, startled and frightened. But before she could scream, he quickly spoke. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I am a Turkish god, and I have flown through the air just to see you." Hearing this, the princess calmed down and was actually quite pleased. They sat close together, and he began to tell her a story. He spoke about her eyes, saying they were like deep, dark lakes where her thoughts swam like mermaids. He described her forehead as a snowy mountain, grand and shining. His words were so charming that the princess was completely enchanted. Then he asked, "Will you marry me?" Without hesitation, the princess smiled and said, "Yes. But you must come here on Saturday," she added. "That's when my parents, the Shah and the Banu, will have tea with me. They will be so proud to meet the god of the Turks. But make sure you have a really good story ready. My mother loves moral and deep stories, while my father enjoys funny ones that make him laugh." "Don't worry," he said. "I will bring a fairy tale as my dowry." Before leaving, the princess gifted him a golden saber, decorated with precious stones. He took it gratefully, then flew back to the woods. There, he bought a fine new dressing gown and sat down to create a story. It was not easy to come up with something that would impress both the Shah and the Banu. He thought hard, writing and rewriting, until at last, his story was ready. when Saturday arrived, the entire royal court gathered for tea with the princess. The moment had come for him to tell his tale. He was welcomed with great kindness. "Will you tell us a story?" asked the Banu. "Something thoughtful and instructive. But also something funny," added the Shah. "I want to laugh." "Oh, of course," he replied with confidence. "Listen carefully." And so he began. There was once a box of matches that lay between a tinderbox and an old iron pot. They started talking about their youth. "We once lived on green fir trees," the matches said. "Every morning and evening, we drank diamond tea, that is, the dew. During the day, the sun shone on us, and the little birds told us stories. We were rich, for while other trees only wore green in summer, we kept our green dresses in both summer and winter. But then the woodcutter came. He cut us down, and our family was separated. Now, we have a new duty, to bring light to the lowest people. That is why we, who were once grand, now live in the kitchen." "My fate was quite different," said the iron pot lying nearby. "Since the day I was made, I have been scrubbed and scoured countless times. I have cooked many meals. My only joy is chatting with my companions, and I am clean and resting after dinner." "You're speaking too fast," spluttered the fire. "Let's settle this. Who among us is the grandest?" suggested the matches. "I don't like talking about myself," said the pot. "Instead, let's have an evening of entertainment. I will tell a story about my life on the shores of the Baltic Sea, near Denmark." "What a beautiful beginning," exclaimed the plates. "This story is going to be wonderful," and indeed, the end was just as good as the beginning. The plates clattered with joy. "Now, I will dance," said the tongs. And oh, how high she kicked! She moved so wildly that an old chair cover in the corner split apart from laughing too hard. The hen would have sung, but she claimed she had a cold. "I can only sing when I am boiling," she explained. By the window sat an old quill pen, quietly watching it all unfold. At this point, the merchant's son paused and looked at the royal family. The Shah was laughing heartily, and the Banu was nodding in approval. The story had been a success. There was nothing special about the old quill pen, except that it had been dipped too deeply into the ink. But instead of seeing this as a flaw, the quill was quite proud of it. "If the hen won't sing," it said, "there's a nightingale outside, hanging in a cage, who will." "I don't think it's right," grumbled the kettle. "Why should a foreign bird be the one to sing? Oh, let's have some acting instead," everyone cried. Just as they were about to begin, the door suddenly opened. The maid walked in. Instantly, everyone fell silent. Not a single pot, pan, or matchstick moved. But deep inside, each of them knew just how grand they were and what they could have done. The maid picked up the matches and struck one to light the fire. The matches flared up, crackling and hissing. "Now everyone can see how important we are," they thought. "Look at how brightly we shine." But in the next moment, they were burnt to ashes. The Banu clapped her hands in delight. "That was a wonderful story. I felt as if I were right there in the kitchen with the matches." "Yes," said the Shah. "You shall marry our daughter." The young man was treated as part of the royal family, and the wedding was set for Monday. The night before, the entire town was lit up with lights. Biscuits and gingerbread were thrown to the crowds. Children stood on tiptoe, cheering and whistling. Everything was grand and festive. "I should give them a special treat too," thought the merchant's son. So he bought fireworks, rockets, crackers, and all kinds of dazzling displays. He packed them into his enchanted trunk and flew high into the sky. the fireworks exploded in a spectacular show of light and color. The Turks were so amazed that they jumped so high, their slippers flew off their feet. They had never seen anything like it before. This must be the God of the Turks, they exclaimed. When the young man finally landed in the woods, he thought, I should go into town and hear what people are saying about the show. Everyone had their own version of what they saw. I saw the Turkish God himself, said one man. His eyes shone like stars, and his beard flowed like rushing water. He flew through the sky in a cloak of fire, said another. The young man smiled, enjoying the stories. Tomorrow was his wedding day. He returned to the woods to rest in his trunk, but when he arrived, his heart sank. The trunk was gone. Or rather, it was nothing but ashes. A spark from the fireworks had landed on it, setting it on fire. His enchanted trunk was destroyed. Now, he could no longer fly. He could never reach his bride. The princess waited all day on the rooftop, hoping to see him return. Perhaps she is still waiting there. As for the young man, he wandered the world, telling stories. But none of them were as joyful as the one he once told about the matches.